All right, Dustin, let's talk about Ontario. We have been, pretty vocal about thinking that Ontario may be kind of disappointed from what we thought and what we were expecting to see coming from up there. And now, in a market that wasn't as robust as we thought from a numbers perspective, maybe the acquisition of customers and or the, retention of customers could be getting a little tougher.
Yeah, we have a lot of chatter from Ontario's provincial parliament saying they think there's too much advertising in the market. Got Lisa Gretzky, who's a member of parliament there, saying we're seeing an explosion of advertising. I live in a border town. We see a lot of sports games, and it's upwards of 15% of advertising. In Toronto, you can barely walk a block without seeing an ad. BetMGM, Bet99, list goes on. Subway stations, on the subway, on the radio. This is really not that much different of the experience we've seen in the U.S. with states that have legalized it. That we've seen a lot of this, like, advertising is in your face. There's a lot of it. It's even on national broadcast at this point as well. I could agree that you're probably seeing aggressive amounts of advertising in Ontario without being there. And I was there last year, and there is a lot of atmospheric, pretty much everywhere you go in Toronto, even at that point. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. They've also made it hard to advertise online. We know some of the, being able to advertise bonuses and things and promotions and things like that. It's very hard in Ontario, and that's made it hard for the non-legacy, non-gray market operators who have come in and tried to get market share right away. They're resorting to this because this is their avenue to get in front of eyeballs. So to try to compete with people who are just importing their databases from the gray market to the regulated market. So is this the right idea? I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people could agree there's just sometimes just too much sports betting advertising, and without knowing exactly what it is in Ontario, there is a feeling that there's too much of it in a lot of places, and Ontario is one of those places.
Adam, it's one of those things where we kind of anticipated this, that at some point there was going to be calls for a complete ban. We have always kind of said, hey, look, why don't these books try to self-regulate? Don't, pump out stuff like we saw in the crazy DFS days and things like that. And I think for the most part, I think that they've done a decent job with all of that, but I do think there's, listen, football season's around the corner. We shall see, right? I mean, there's probably going to be a crank up in ad spend as we head into the NFL season this year. It kind of bleeds into our next topic as well, which is we're talking about ads, and then we're also just talking about betting rules in general. We always knew that there was going to be little tweaks along the way as we continue to grow this industry and figure things out along the way. And so now we have some asking just for some clarity on the rules aspect.
We do. And to put a bow on the Ontario situation, first of all, I'm going to answer your obvious question before you start Googling. No, Lisa Gretzky is not related to that Gretzky. Ontario has been a weird market in a lot of ways. And I think everything with Ontario ultimately goes back to they decided to try to bring the gray market in and give them a pathway to becoming legal and regulated sports operators. And what that ultimately did was you made the market that you're fighting for way smaller than it is in the United States, because there are places, 365 namely, where they've been there. And all they're essentially doing is saying, oh, yeah, well, come, stay with us. How much easier would it have been for anyone in the U.S.? Obviously, that's what DraftKings and FanDuel have employed with DFS over to sports betting. But yeah, it would have been that much easier in the U.S. if that were the case. And I think if you're in the market in Ontario, if you're a U.S.-based operator who's been trying to play up there, I think the biggest thing you look at with this is saying, I'm not even that worried about what they do to regulate sports betting ads, but I am worried that they're talking about regulating iGaming ads as well, because it would seem to me that the only play for U.S. operators in the Canadian market is a long play for iGaming. Ultimately, it doesn't make any sense to try to compete on the sports betting front. And you've heard that from Jason Robbins already from DraftKings to talk about how difficult the market is with the rules that Dustin mentioned, with the potential for an ad ban. And so if the federal government is getting involved, then you hope it probably gets negotiated to something more reasonable than a full ban, because that would seem to be a restriction on speech and a restriction on trade that might not measure up, because they're comparing it to tobacco. We could go a long way if we're going to talk about vices with sports betting versus tobacco.